The JWILLY Show is sponsored by Moji Masala. Spice up your quarantine recipes with small batch single dish Indian spice packets for fresh, authentic, and homemade Indian food. Use code 2019CHAMPS for 20% discount. Offer is good till supplies last. Student athletes getting paid, the evolving offense, and more. Today on the JWILLY Show. Coach Jason Williford joins me now to talk UVA basketball on Locker Room Access. Coach, how was your week?
It was good, Mark. How you doing? Good to be back.
I'm good. New York's finally getting a little bit of sun after a rainy week.
Hey, we got sun here. We actually it was something neat happened today. The local elementary school teachers, but I don't know if it was the PTA or whatever, they came riding down the block, all in their cars. "We love you" painted on the side of their cars, kids holding out signs, and they were just blowing horns, just thanking us through the neighborhood. It's actually pretty cool. So I had a neat afternoon with all the teachers and just showing support for the kids. They missed their students, so that was pretty cool.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. And based on last week's conversation, I'm sure you're not ready to let go of your favorite student.
I was ready to throw him in the back of one of those pickups.
All right. Before we get to the questions, we have to handle some housekeeping. All right. We got 3 agenda points. 1, prohibited phrases. I realize you weren't aware last week as I committed a violation on the Locker Room Access podcast myself by using the phrase "a good fit." You committed a violation last week by saying "trust the process." On the Locker Room Access podcast, any mention of Ken Palm, "a good fit," or "trust the process" is an automatic violation, and the guilty party is assessed 50 push-ups. This is your official warning. In the future, if you use the phrase "trust the process" or any of the other 2, you will hear a buzz, and one lucky listener will be awarded 2 tickets to a UVA home game courtesy of the JWILLY Show. And let's be clear, that means courtesy of Jason Williford. According to our boy Fresh, you like to spend wisely. That's actually not how he said it. I'm saying a little nicer. So make sure you don't use any of those phrases if you don't want to purchase tickets for a lucky fan.
All right.
2, the Locker Room Access Forum has spoken. Last week, we requested listeners to send in questions via our forum. We were able to determine Locker Room Access has some dedicated and smart fans. Some really good questions. A big thank you to everyone who put an effort to participate. Later in the show, we will give you 2 of those questions. The listeners of those questions will receive packets of spices from our sponsor, Moji Masala. 3, changes under the COVID. The new logo is one of the hot topics around UVA. You've had a week to check it out. I don't think I've read a single positive social media post endorsing it. What are your thoughts?
Can I go back for a second before
Yes.
I answer that question,
It's
Mark?
the JWILLY Show.
All right, I'm going to go back. I did not know that was part of the Locker Room Access.
Yep.
Those 3 words. I will never give you 50 push-ups.
You don't have to.
If by chance I make another mistake, I want to get this clarified. Is it 50 push-ups in addition to buying tickets?
Nope.
Or I have
2
to
tickets.
get tickets?
2 tickets.
All right, I can handle 2 tickets. Yeah. Okay, all right. 50 push-ups I can't do.
No, we leave that for Dougie.
Okay.
Dougie Fresh on the Locker Room Access podcast.
All right, we'll let him do those.
Yeah.
The logo. Back to the logo. My mother said, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. True Words of Wisdom by Miss Barbara Field and Sabers. I'm digging those. At first I thought it was a dung beetle. I wasn't sure what I was looking at. Either a beetle or a buffalo head. I wasn't sure what that thing was. But I'm a team player. This is what the administration wants. This is what the university's doing. I'm going to wear it with pride. And sooner rather than later, everyone's going to be on board and they're going to love those new logos. So I'm going with the logos.
Okay. There's a little controversy surrounding it. right? I saw one article and I saw one tweet claiming that there is some racism behind the logo. Have you heard that?
That I haven't heard.
Yeah.
What are they saying?
That the walls are represent the walls of the time of slavery, when slaves weren't allowed to be part of the university, but they built those, and that was their way of not being able to look over or look through the campus and see what was going on.
That's
so
all.
It was a very divisive, I guess.
Yeah, and there's some history. I mean, there's some history with the university in regards to that. Those were the times back then, and that's not specific to just UVA. I mean, you could go across many universities, especially in the South, and that'd be true for a lot of schools. We do have our history, but I will say this: I think the university, especially under President Ryan, has stepped up, acknowledged some of the transgressions of the past, and we've actually got a new memorial that's being built on grounds to honor those who those slaves, those persons, those back then who contributed to the university in significant ways, helped build it, were integral parts of the university. So there's a memorial going up. I wasn't aware of that. Listen, I'm born and raised in Richmond, Virginia. I understand our history, being down here in the South, but I didn't necessarily take that away from those logos, which is unfortunate, because I don't think that's what Nike was trying to do at all. I think they were trying to, from what I gather, just the little knowledge that I have, they were using the rotunda and parts of the university in Charlottesville to come up with a logo that encompassed everything about the university as a whole and the community as a whole. So that's new to me.
Gotcha. All right, we're going to get to the meat and the potatoes of the show. Hot topic circling the NCAA. Student athletes getting paid for endorsements. When you were entering your first year, think about it that way. How would that ruling have impacted your decision?
Wow. I don't know if it would have changed my decision to come here. I would have surely taken advantage of it. If being an in-state kid from Richmond, an hour down the road, if I could have gotten endorsements from businesses and companies based on my athletic ability and what I was able to do and garner some deals, I surely would have done that. And I definitely would have done it before my first year here, because I wouldn't have got anything after my first year. I mean, I played very little. Now, Corey, Alexander, Junior Burroughs, those guys would have, Harold Dean, those guys would have mopped up, Brian Stith. Now, as I got older and I became a little more popular as a player, maybe it would have benefited me, my fourth year. But I would have definitely taken advantage coming out of high school.
Let me phrase it a different way.
Okay.
Let's say you're a top 10 player.
Yeah.
And you're being recruited by all the top schools.
Yeah.
Do you go to the school that's offering you the most money through endorsements? Wow. And not necessarily you, but how that might impact some players' decisions now.
I think that's personal preference, for kids and their situations, depending on where they come from, what their needs might be, family situation. That may come into the equation for those guys. That won't be the case for everybody, but for sure, for some guys, they're gonna. You know how you had your pros and cons when you guys were going through the process, right? This school, basketball, this school, academics, this school, style of play, blah, blah, blah. Well, some kids are going to have a pros and cons of, all right, most money. Just the way it'll be.
Yep.
And it won't be as many kids that will look to do that, because I still think at the end of the day, the kids want to play.
Yeah.
They could get, I mean, they can get endorsements wherever they go, but ultimately they want to go where they're going to be able to play.
All right. So as a coach, good idea or bad idea?
Oh, I don't know. I could go either way. I'm always Switzerland when people ask me these types of questions. I find good and bad. As a coach, I think it's evolved. I think it's ultimately come to that. It's such a big business. I don't know how you stop it. I don't know how you make it fair for all student athletes, because I don't think it will be fair. I think, certain kids will benefit more than others, and that's just the way it is. But I think it's come to that. I do like it because at least there's no behind the back sneaking money under the table type stuff. There shouldn't be. Now, if you can get paid for image and likeness, then go get paid for image and likeness, and it's all up front, and it's okay.
Right. How do you maintain a chemistry with one player? And this is looking at it from a coach.
Yeah.
One player who's getting a ton of endorsements, and another player who thinks he should be getting a ton of endorsements, but isn't. Right. That's the same. That's a tough climate to control.
That's the same as playing time, though. You know what I mean? Like, how come he's playing? How come I'm not playing? It's the same thing. How come he gets more money? It's just egos. You're going to have to balance egos. And that's just now that becomes another aspect of managing egos. You're going to have to temper, those types of expectations, monetarily now as opposed to playing time. So it could be a headache. But I think athletes understand that certain athletes garner more attention than others. I think that just comes with the territory. When you're on a team and you know it, everyone knows who the stars are and who the role guys and guys that play their parts are. So I think it comes with the territory.
All right. We're moving to question 2. How many blind highlights videos do you receive from kids and families every week? I know I sent 3 out this week from parents who requested. I sent 3 out this week.
I don't think they're blind. I think they're just sending it. Like, we get a lot.
Well, I mean blind, like not coming from a coach or not coming from someone that you know. So just a parent and a kid saying, hey, check out my kid. He's good enough to play at UVA. He's a star. He's so good.
Right now, during this lockdown, during this quarantine, we're getting quite a few. I've probably got 60, 70 I need to look at, to be honest with you. And it just keeps coming each day.
Wait a minute. Do you really look at all of them?
We divvy them up as a staff. So we're gonna look. I'm gonna tell you an interesting story. I'll tell you a crazy story. I know hopefully I won't run too long, but when Dave Odom was at Wake Forest and Tim Duncan was getting recruited, Tim Duncan didn't have a whole lot of offers, not a lot of interest. I mean, he's from the Caribbean. There were videos that got sent out. Certain schools didn't look at them.
Right.
And Wake happened to be one of the schools that followed up, and the rest is history. So you better do your due diligence. That's how Vin Baker ended up at the University of Hartford. Like, people just, some kids do fall through the cracks. So we don't want to be one of those schools.
Right. Good point. And I think, I mean, I know I used to get a lot just running basketball programs and coaching in high school.
It's hard though, man. You feel bad. It's hard. And we try to look at all of them. We try to respond. At some point, it may take a little longer. But I mean, right now, that's where we are.
Right. But I know there are a lot of schools who won't look at them unless they're sent through a coach. Right. And a lot of parents who think that their kids are the next coming, and they really can't play at all. Right. It's obnoxious sometimes.
Well, you get a lot of that. But I mean, I don't fault the kid or the parent. They're trying. And they want the best for their kid. I get that.
Yeah.
No, somebody better look at my 2 winning times, right?
I'm sure they'll have their opportunities. How do you identify recruits and how early?
Oh, so
When I say how early, how young?
I mean, ninth grade sometimes, 10th grade. It just depends. I've so typically, and I think I talked about this last time. This time of year, you get a chance to go see young kids
Yeah.
in those AAU tournaments. So in the spring and summer, obviously you're recruiting the upcoming class, but when you get a break in the schedule and you can sneak away and go take a look at, the ninth grade, whatever that 15U or 14U program, especially the ones that are close, proximity wise to us, regionally, we try to always take a sneak peek at those 14 and 15U programs because you want to get an idea of who's coming up next. And so we start early. We don't always offer, but we got an idea who's coming up through the ranks.
And do you have connections in certain areas that you trust more than others?
Yeah, I mean, every guy's got connections. I mean, I've spent time in Boston and DC, so there's connections in New England, connections in that area. Now being in, back home in Virginia, and Orlando was in Carolina, and Tone's been out west, and Sodi's been in the Midwest. So we all use those different connections, and obviously there are more people. There are more folks that are more credible than others, and you rely on them, and you rely on a lot of scouting services.
Okay.
Not always, not the rankings, but people that we trust.
So which scouting services do you rely on more than others, or do you trust more than others?
I'm not gonna get into. I don't want to piss anybody off.
Okay.
I got some guys that are my boys, and they know who they are. and those guys, but they all do a good job.
Yeah.
Those guys, they beat the bushes more than we do. I mean, they're at more events and they're seeing more kids, so it's good to rely on those guys.
Yeah, sure. I know we talked about the kid Lance Ware a while ago, who's going to Kentucky, and we talked about RJ Davis, played at Stepanak up in New York, who's going to Carolina next year.
Yeah.
Did you recruit any of those kids?
We looked at both. RJ more than Lance, two tremendous basketball talents. Those programs are lucky to have those guys. We put our eyes on them. We made some calls, and we didn't get too far down the road with either.
All right. So you got kids at school on the squad, on the team, and every kid and every family is not going to always be happy. Right. I remember when we were on our unofficial visit, and Bennett said to us, listen, you guys aren't always going to be happy with me.
Right.
And he was right. There were times. Right. How do you handle disgruntled families? Is it an open door policy? Do you make yourself accessible to everybody? Do you have a strict policy that says, I'm not going to discuss playing time or your kid's role?
No, that's always the hard thing within coaching. And I've never been a head coach, but I can only imagine as the head coach, that being one of the most difficult things. Kids disgruntled with playing time, families disgruntled with playing time, and it's always playing time. It's never, academics or anything. It's they want more, and that is the hard part. But there's an open door policy. And we've had disgruntled kids, we've had disgruntled families. They voice their opinions at times. We let them know what's going on and why the situation is the way it is. And then, they handle it and choose to stay. Some choose to leave. But it's always difficult. That those are hard. And listen, we care tremendously about every kid, and we want them all to play. But you just can't play 13 dudes that are on scholarship. And quite honestly, that's been one of the reasons over the last few years we haven't used the full allotment of scholarships, because we want to keep kids happy. We want kids, like we've been fortunate. We've been able to redshirt guys, have a transfer sit, and guys kind of wait turns, and so it's been beneficial that way. But then there's been years when we've had everybody on scholarship and all 13 want to play, and it's just a hard thing to do. And you talk to them, you let them know you understand, you care. Ultimately, they just got to keep working, and they got to do what's right for them. And for the most part, most kids understand,
right?
And they accept those consequences.
Right. So I just spoke to Wake Forest hired their new coach recently.
Yeah.
Right. And I just spoke to a father of one of the kids who's going to be a third year or junior, as they probably say at Wake Forest, and not at UVA. And he was asking me what he should do. And I was asking, well, what are you going to do? And he wasn't sure. And he said, if this new transfer rule is passed that you don't have to sit out, they're strongly considering leaving.
Right.
Right. So what would be your plan if you're coming into a new school to keep kids?
Well, when we first got here, quite honestly, Mark, we in 09, we had a class with John Tell Evans and Tristan Spurlock, who the previous regime had recruited, and we had to re-recruit those guys, and then you have to re-recruit the current roster of the returning guys, and to see who wants to be a part. So we went through that, and both those kids end up sticking to their commitments, and one didn't after the first year, and John Tell ended up staying all four. But it's something that happens with every coaching change, and it's no fault of the kids. You know, the administration makes decisions, and new coaches come in. But you also, as a coach, when you come in, you want guys that want to be a part of what you're doing, and you want them to have total buy-in. And if they don't, there's no hard feelings. You just gotta recruit your butt off to get your guys who want to be a part of your philosophy and what you're doing.
Right. All right, let's discuss the evolving offense. Do you guys as a staff ever become flexible and apply the offense to match the players you have? Or do you try to stick with the same system throughout the entire season?
Yeah, we're the defensive questions, Mark. We're a defensive program. All of these offensive questions people want to know about offense.
You're an expert on defense.
All right. Offense. No, we do. Each year we assess who we have coming in new. We assess the guys and their skill set, what they have developed in the off season, and we try to put the offense that we're comfortable running, that Tony knows. We try to implement that. But we also tweak a few things based on personnel, guys' skill sets. This year in particular, you saw a lot more ball screens, and you saw Kihei with the ball, utilizing ball screens, and we played off of Jay and Mamadi, either rolling or separating, pick and pop, and we kind of played that way because that was the strength of the team this year. Right. In the past, we've had Ty and Kyle flying off screens and running around, and we would put Ty in ball screens occasionally, and even London and Malcolm and those guys. Those teams with Joe and Malcolm and Justin and AG and Toby, those teams were a little more physical, so we could play a little more smash mouth and throw it inside and run our what people call our mover blocker stuff, and it was just a different game with that personnel. But Tony's always looking to maximize and adjust based on what we have personnel wise.
Compromise is always good, right?
Well, you listen, I just got off a Zoom call. We as a staff were on a Zoom call, and you're just trying to incrementally grow, even if it's a little bit each year. We want to incrementally get better at what we're doing. So you can't stay stagnant. You know, as a staff, we got to get better. As players, they got to get better. So always looking to improve.
All right, this is the last question from me before we get into the guest questions. Earlier today, we interviewed Jerry Radcliffe, and he's one of the many, many items that we talked about with him.
Hootie, they call him Hootie, Mark. That's his
All right.
nickname, Hootie.
I'll let him know next time I speak to him. I'll say, hey, Hootie. I would not do that because I would have a little bit more respect for him than that. And I don't know him that well. But we talked about the different cultures over his 40 plus years covering UVA. And clearly the current UVA staff thoroughly does their research, right? So who do you guys talk to about a kid that you're recruiting? Is it the mom and dad? Is it the grandma? Is it the teacher? How thoroughly do you do this?
It's all the above. We coaches, trainers, if they have them, their workout guys, mom and dad, aunts, uncles, cousins, anybody. We're always trying to get as much info about the kids, other coaches that they played against in whatever league, either AAU or opposing high school coaches if we have relationships. We don't want to take a shortcut on character, and that's huge. And so we're always trying to get good character, buy-in guys. So for Tony, that's a big thing. You know, he often says we'll take a 3-star talent and a 5-star character all day, every day. And so that's kind of the motto we live by. And so you have to do your homework. You got to do your due diligence on kids, and we'll take kids that may be somewhat, quote unquote, rough around the edge because we think our culture is pretty strong. And you can't take too many of those guys, but you can have one kid, maybe two, that just needs to be polished a little bit. You know, he's a rough stone. He needs to be polished, and we think our culture can embrace that.
Thank you for giving my child a chance.
He was easy. He just was a smart. I can't say he was. The New Yorker would come out him from time to time.
All right, we're going to hit our guest questions from our Locker Room Access Forum. This one is from, and I hope I don't butcher his name, Adventive Quasar. We actually had a bunch of really good questions. How much does UVA incorporate analytics into the coaching approach for game planning, player development, et cetera? And how has that changed over the last few years?
You'd be really surprised. I think a lot of folks use a ton of analytics in regards to the way the game is evolving. You know, 3-point shots, layups, not so much of the mid-range game and things like that. We're a little old school in our process, and we use it from time to time. You know, points per possession and things like that. Defensive efficiency. So there's some analytical things that we use and we look at, but we're a little old school. Simplicity with execution is what we often say. You know, the guys will tell you that the former guys, Tony often refers to that. Just keep it simple. There's an old motto that my high school coach used to say all the time: "Keep it simple, stupid." We're a little more old school, traditional, but there are some analytics that we look at, efficiency-wise within offense, shots. And then our defensive production, we utilize that quite a bit.
Who handles that for you guys?
Well, Johnny Carpenter, Cal Getter, those are the young, smart guys on the staff. Johnny's putting that UVA education to use. And Tony likes to look at that stuff Um, sometimes he's not all the way in, but he understands the evolution of the game, and so he incorporates some of that.
Question 2, this is from Two Guard, who I met a few years ago in New York City, well, actually in Jersey, at an all-star game that Ty and Kyle were participating in. He actually had really, really good questions. I'm actually going to combine 2 of them. How long did it take you to learn the pack line? And when you disagreed, if and when you disagreed with TB over a lineup or a strategy or a play, do you voice it? And just how much does he listen? So really 3 questions.
So is he asking me personally?
Yeah, you personally. How long did it take you to learn?
Take me to learn it?
Yep.
Well, it's funny because I said to Tony when he interviewed me and I was getting to know his offense and defensive philosophies and kind of his systems. I told him, I said, look, Tony, I've watched some film now, and I the pack line has a name. Your dad named it the pack line, but this is what we did when I played at UVA. And we just didn't call it that, but we were defensive minded, in gaps, not denying. We chuck cutters. Now that was back then when you cut through the lane, you got hit. I said, so this is new, man. I'm somewhat familiar with this, but it didn't take me long because it was very similar to how I played, how Jeff Jones and both Terry Holland played defensively. Just had to get used to teaching it. And some of the post-trap stuff that we do was a little different. We didn't necessarily do that. But it didn't take long. I got a decent feel for the game, so I got it fairly quick. But for players, it just takes it. They've got to go through it, and they've got to do tons of closeouts and understand rotations in the trap and stay continuous. You're going to always hear me talk about that on defense. For the players, it just takes that experience and going through it so that we're all on the same page. Do I disagree with Tone from time to time? Of course. Does he listen to me? Heck no. He occasionally listens, but I get a little bit of say, and it's not often that we're in full disagreement, but there's some times where I may think one way and he's got his way and we butt heads, but ultimately he makes the call. So that's why they pay him the big bucks. Well, there was a third one, I forgot it, Mark.
Well, so it's not an official question. UVAJ asked, well, it's an official question, but we're not going to give an official answer. UVAJ asked a question about Ty's recruitment. And I said, UVAJ, please check out the Hanging with the Cool segment that I did with you. What was that last, I don't know, whatever it was, a year ago, year and a half, year ago. And it's on the Locker Room Access website.
Yeah.
In the Hanging with the Who segment. And I'll just share this with him, that you were instantly infatuated with Ty.
I'm going to stick with that. Yes, we're going with that. Hey, wasn't that one of the first, the Hanging with the Who's? Wasn't that?
That was our first Hanging with the Who segment.
Yeah.
Yep.
You guys must like me.
What's not to like about you?
I appreciate the love.
Absolutely. Thank you, Coach, as always, for your candor. Always great to have you.
Hey, I appreciate you. I'll see you next week. And next week, you'll see me. They won't, but I'm going to have my Locker Room Access gear. T-Dub, thanks, my man. I appreciate you. I know It wasn't fresh. It was you. Thank you.
T-Dubs is always on his grind. All right, listeners, please subscribe to us and like us on YouTube. Subscribe to us on Apple or Spotify. And check out the latest merchandise on our Locker Room Access website. This is the JWILLY Show, giving you Locker Room Access.